Doing a building survey today on a detached bungalow down on the south coast. Called it again a how-to video. It's not really, it's just how we do it. The main thing with these surveys is that you have your own methodology of how to inspect a property. Mine is just a general look around first of all, then I measure up all the rooms, then I do the outside top down, and then I'll do the inside top down. That's not right, it's not wrong, it's just how we do them, or how I do them, and how I teach my guys to do them as well. So if you have your own methodology, which might be inside first, then start at low level and work your way up, and then finish with the outside looking down, then that's absolutely fine. I think the critical thing is that you do it the same way every time, and by doing it the same way every time, chances of actually missing anything are minimal. So we've arrived at this house. We've had a general look around the property. We've measured up the rooms. We've taken all damp meter readings. We've done some preliminary stuff before our inspection, so we know that it's founded on sandstone. Onto the externals, and always start with the roof, gradually working down. Probably said before, it doesn't matter how you survey a property as long as you have your own method and you stick to that method as much as you can. Therefore, chances of actually missing anything are greatly reduced. So for me, it's outside top down, inside top down, starting with loft space inside. Okay, so to the front of the property, there's a valley gutter. There's a valley detail to the front. This is because the roof is slightly L-shaped. Can't video out the front, unfortunately, because there's builders next door with a radio on, and that would interrupt all the sound going through this. But what we've got is a fairly basic roof. At the front here, we can see the valley, bit of moss build up in the valley, which is not great. That can be cleaned out. And over the front section of roof, over the front door, there's a small lead roof that's also been constructed. Okay, to the back of the property, this is our main roof. We've got a single lap pan tile. So the tiles here are what we call a concrete single lap tile. So they're arranged as tile starts there and finishes just under there. Not sure if we can see that. Zoom it on the camera. And we have a couple of hookovers here, which creates a drainage channel should any water track up that way at all. And then there's a lap, probably of about 50 millimeters or so on the tiles. A bit difficult to lift up, but there we go. So we can see our lap there is actually on there. It's about 75 millimeters, and we can see also from that we've got an aluminium nail, so all of our tiles are nailed in. Roof coverings in generally good condition, but there are a few little bits and pieces. Ridge, again, fairly good order. It's half round water bedded ridge tile, all okay, but there is a lot of moss up there. Got a vent pipe as well, a flue vent up there, and we've also got quite a bit of moss in the tiles generally. These really should be cleaned off. The moss should be cleaned off because it's not great for a roof covering long term. Okay, so once we've looked at the roof, we'll start to look at the chimneys. Here we've got a single chimney stack. This is to the rear of the living room. The rear of the property serves the living room. This is a brick built stack. It's got a terracotta pot at high level, and it's got a concrete shelf around the top of the chimney stack. Some chipped bricks there, probably where our old TV antenna was installed. But other than that, it's in fair condition. There's no cracking, there's no evidence of movement. Bit of moss at high level needs to be cleaned out, but other than that, it's not too bad. Flashings around the chimney. We've got here our step flashings to the side, and then we've got an apron to the front, and then we'd have a back gutter up around the back of the chimney. Again, these all appear to be in fairly good condition given the age. We can see some staining on the front flashing just there. That's probably where it was originally installed. No patination oil was used, and what patination does is it stops the leadwork discolouring. So at the side here, the lead's nice and clean, so it has been patinated. So overall, generally fair condition. So next item we're going to look at then is the guttering. It's kind of the same front and rear. It's this plastic profile guttering, discharges into a number of square rainwater pipes around the property. Gutter brackets are quite excessive. This one here is around 1.2 metre centres. and always got a tape in my pocket, or I should have a tape in my pocket, so we can just check that. I'll put that on there, bring it over. Oh, it's actually a metre centre, looks more than that. Recommended centres on gutter brackets for plastic guttering is a metre. Here inside the guttering we can see that it's blocked up with moss. That is just going to harbour more moisture, overload the guttering. And here it discharges straight into the guttering that's around the conservatory, which then discharges into its own rainwater pipe. Over the other side we can see that the guttering is also filled with moss. And if we look at the front of the property, these photos here, we can also see that the guttering is in fair condition, but it's just blocked with moss a number of locations to the front of the property as well. So really, overall, considering our roof elements of the building, we need to clean the moss off, and that's probably all that needs to be done. Clean the moss off, clean the gutters out, and then we've got a roof that should last a good few years. Okay, back at ground level, we can again see this is our verge detail. So we've got our tiles that stop at the edge of the roof, we have a mortar pointed verge, and then we've got this detail here which is called an undercloak. Given the age of the property, that's probably asbestos, but it's unlikely to be changed or altered, so it's not a major issue. It's in reasonable condition given the age of the property, so no repair or alteration works are required to that. So while we're looking up at the property, we can have a look at here we've got our soffits underneath, our fascias to the front, and then our barge boards to the side. These are all in new PVC, and these also look to be in generally fair condition. Now, because it's an L-shaped roof, we've got our front section of roofs that comes down to a normal eaves there. So we've got soffits to the front section and to the rear, and we can see that some ventilation strips have been put in to provide cross ventilation to the roof. It's kind of inadequate, the amount that are being provided, but it's still better than having none. Up our barge boards and our soffits to the barge boards, we don't need any ventilation up there, and that all looks to be in generally fair condition. So our next element on our external inspection of the property is the external walls. I've measured these through a front window, and they were 290mm thick, and they are of cavity construction, very typical of this age. This is a flattened brick, which is a common brickwork, and it's got a rubbed mortar joint, all very normal, with no significant issues that we can see here. But we're not here to just point out and look at significant issues as surveyors. We're here to kind of work out and see what else is going on with the property. Now, if I look here, we can see that there is a made good hole. Now, the reason for that made good hole is that suggests that the property has had cavity filling wall insulation provided at some stage. Now, once we find one, we can then find others. So if I go, it will generally be 3 feet either way. So 3 feet to the right, we have another one. If I go 3 feet up, we don't have one. So there'll be one around here somewhere. There we go. There's one just there. And then again, if I can see others, there's another one just there. So it's a reasonable match on the mortar actually. Most of the time, these cavity fills that are done, it's just whatever pre-mixed or mortar batches they have with them. So it's not always a good match. But here it is a pretty good match. They're actually not the easiest of things to see. So that improves the overall thermal efficiency of the wall. But what about the structure? Now, when we're doing a building survey, what I'd always like to do is eye up the end of the property, and just to see if we can see any bulging or any distortion or anything like that that we need to look at to comment on. And the walls here, they're plumb. There's no evidence of any cracking, except the conservatory, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But what we do need to look at is, we can't actually see it today because it's a visual only inspection, but the wall ties that should be embedded in the mortar joints to tie the outer skin of brickwork and the inner skin of blockwork together on a property of this age would be wire ties. Now, in itself, that shouldn't be an issue, but during the 70s, in a rather unexplained manner at the time, properties started failing, and outside brick skin started falling off properties. And when it was looked into, it's found that the wire ties were actually corroding. So I think it was in 1981 they finally put together proper British standards for the galvanising of wall ties. But prior to that, pretty much throughout the 60s and the 70s, you can get wall tie failure without particularly any indication of that wall tie failure happening. Now, prior to this, go back to the 20s and the 30s when cavity walls started, you would have a wall tie that would run across the cavity like normal. It would be maybe 30 millimeters wide and maybe 3, 4, 5 millimeters thick. It would have a butterfly detail on one end and a twist in the middle so that any water that soaks in could drip down the cavity. Now, what happened with these is they'll corrode. Water's designed to get through this skin, runs down the back of the wall and then out at low level. As it hit those wall ties, which would be roughly every 450 centres, so every 6 courses, and then every 900 or so horizontally, it would corrode the outer part of the wall tie. When metal corrodes, it expands. So what you can sometimes see on properties is you can see a hairline crack. 6 courses down, you can see another hairline crack. 6 courses down, you can see another hairline crack. And what's happening is as the wall ties are corroding, the metal's expanding, and that's creating the hairline horizontal cracking. Sometimes it gets a bit beyond hairline, and it can be 1 or 2 millimeters. But in that instance, the wall ties would need to actually be taken out and replaced. Some people would just drill a chemical anchor in through to the inner skin to tie the wall back together. Structurally, that would be okay, but if you leave the old embedded iron wall ties in there, they're just going to corrode further and further and cause more issues with the crack into the wall overall. So in this property, the external walls are in pretty good condition. They are 50, 60 years old now, so they're doing well. But someone has added a conservatory to the rear of the property. It's not in great condition, and inside the property we can observe there is a bit of a separation of the finishes. So we can see at the bottom here our sealant is tightly abutting this board. Then there's a gap to the top, and then there's a gap down the side. There's a couple of things that are indicative of this. So what we'll come to in a moment is the sealant's got a very smooth edge to it, so it has at some stage been down the gap that would have been between the window board and the wall. So the sealant's been put in there, and the window board's pulled away from it since. So we need to look at why that's happened. Now, if we look outside the property, come back to this corner in a minute because it's not in great condition. This plastic trim has been added on at some stage, and we can see there's a sealant joint coming all the way up the wall at the abutment between the conservatory and the original wall. Once we start to get up to here, the gap starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then right up the top, there's quite a significant gap between the fascia of the conservatory and the rear wall of the property. We can also see where the fascia would have originally sat on the plastic fascia would have sat on the stained timber work of the conservatory, and there's now a distance there from that point to that point of about 10 millimeters or so. So what's happening here is the conservatory is probably founded on poor quality foundations. So the whole thing is tipping back slightly and coming away from the property. It's what we call rotational movement. In want of a better word, the conservatory is subsiding away from the property. Now the conservatory roof leaks, and in this corner here, we've actually got, this is the timber frame to the conservatory, and it's just completely rotten away. Now I suspect this will be wet rot because it's got a source of moisture at the top. If it was dry rot, well, you wouldn't get dry rot exposed to sunlight like this generally, normally. It can happen, but not that often. But we've got water soaking into here, and look, on a rainy day, has been raining, we've got water dripping down through the guttering, soaking this timber structural work on the edge here, and it's just gone straight into the building and completely rotted this through. Normally the repair for wet rot is to stop the source of moisture and then chop out any rotten timbers and replace. But here we've got more than just this rotten timber, so this could not be repaired, this would need to be replaced. But then we've got our issue with the foundations, and we've got a leaking roof. So really the only option for this conservatory is to take it down and start again. While I'm at the back here, we've got these lintels over the little outbuildings that are built into the property. Now normally a lintel would bear onto the brickwork both ends, but here we can see it stopped short. Now if this was a two-story property, we would expect the inside of the lintel to be approximately 215 high, 3 brick courses. But here, the outer skin is only 65 high. And if we look on the inside, it's only 65 high. But we've got end bearing. So these are a flat concrete boot lintel. The only difference between these and what you'd normally see on bigger houses or properties where you've got a second story above is that this element of it would be up here. So this would be 215. And then it narrows down, the ends coming at an angle. So it gives this feature outside that the lintel is not actually supported or anything when it is. This detail here, just over it, is a cavity tray. So any moisture that's getting in above will come out the cavity tray, which is good news. But there's no weak vent joints to drain the cavity tray, which is not ideal. Onto doors and windows. So this is a rear kitchen door. If this was timber, we'd call this a 2xG door. Very, very common on kind of normal properties, if you like, with a panel at low level, which would originally been timber. And if that was a timber door, that would have been a single glazed panel there. But it's replacement plastic, so the whole lot's in double glazed. We've got a bit of an ill-fitted door, actually. On this side, the frame is very close to the brickwork, and on this side, there's a gap of about 10 millimeters or so. Let me just once again grab my tape measure out of my pocket, and we can measure our gap. So it is about 10 millimeters, yeah, what's that, 11 millimeters or so. But we come up the door, and it's much tighter at the top, but then over the other side, we've got a bit of a gap. So the whole of the door's being fitted out of square, which is not great. Next to its kitchen window, all the windows in the property have been replaced with UPVC. So here we've got our sill. Obviously we've got drips to the underside because it is a plastic sill. And then we've got our frame with our plastic trims internally glazed and our double glazed glass member. And then we've got our fan opening fan light up at high level. There are no trickle vents fitted to these windows, which trickle vents provide background ventilation to the property. And the sealants around the edge started to deteriorate. Don't look like they've been all that well installed first time around, but they are starting to pull away and fail a little bit. The windows have got a good few years left in them. There's going to be some maintenance required, and in the longer term, they are going to need to be replaced. So while we're looking at doors and windows for the property, the garage has a replacement door frame. This is all actually in plastic and aluminium with an electronically operated garage door. Charles just press a little button inside the house, and yeah, nice little feature. It's as part of a survey, we're just going to check that it does open and close okay. It was closed when we got here, so we know it opens, but we're just checking the operation of the door while it closes. And that all looks pretty good to me. Looking at damp-proof course and dampness is an integral part of any building survey. You know, the idea of dampness scares a lot of people. The idea of rising damp scares a lot of people, although I'm firmly of the opinion it doesn't actually exist. Most rising damp, I've never come across a true case of rising damp, but when I have been asked to look at it, most of it's either a poor damp-proof course arrangement or more than likely bridging of the damp-proof course, which I'll come on to in a moment. So here we've got a bitumen damp-proof course, and this is around 100, well, it's 2 brick courses above ground level, which is a suggested requirement. And if I again just get my tape measure out, there we go, about 150 mil above ground level. My colleague's inside just doing some damp meter readings at the moment, and they're all pretty low, what we've seen. If we do come across a high one, we'll look at it and see what the potential cause could be. But what we can see here is we've got some overspill from the gutters. You can see all the drips on the underside of the gutters. Now water drips down and splashes the wall. And you can see the idea of having a damp-proof course at least 150 mil above the ground level is that you can see all the dirt and the crap on here from water splashing. And once we get above the damp-proof course, it's a lot less. So the reason, one of the main reasons for damp-proof courses being 150 mil or 2 bricks above ground level is partly so we don't get any more anything bridging the damp proof course, which can cause a damp issue inside, but also splashing water, sorry, will just mainly hit the brickwork at low level. So that's all good. However, once we get to the rear of the property, the damp proof course now is much closer to the ground level. And here we've got hard palings. Damp proof course now is only, what's that, 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters or so above DPC, above ground level. Now, why this can be an issue is if this brickwork here above the DPC becomes excessively saturated, if the wall's been built properly, it shouldn't really cause an issue. However, we're all aware of cowboy builders. We're all aware of sometimes the best builders in the world trying to do a good job, and most of them I think do. But there will be, where the wall ties are, you know, our 6 core centres, roughly 3 foot that way, there'll be mortar around some of those wall ties. It's inevitable. You know, you can't make an omelette without cracking a few eggs, and you can't build a wall without some mortar drops falling down. But if there's an excessive build-up of that, what can happen is water will splash, saturate this wall, and then it can penetrate into the property around where these mortar snots are. And if there's been a bit of a sloppy bricklayer, and there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of crap at low level, that can provide a path for the damp straight into the property, which most people will misdiagnose as rising damp. It's not, it's low level penetrating damp. Now this property has also got, we can see there's a number of air bricks around the property. Not quite sure what the plastic is, but that's a fairly run-of-the-mill air brick that's been provided. There are a few of them kicking around the property. There you go, there's another one just there. On the subject of damp proof courses, inside a property, we would take damp meter readings, generally about metre and a half centres, all the way around the external walls of the property, generally at low level. If we start to get any areas of concern, then we'll look into it further, and we may take a lot more readings. In surveying practices, we call it following the trail. So if all our damp meter readings are low, then we're quite satisfied that there isn't an issue. But if we start getting higher readings, there could be something. We need to follow that trail to find out what the issue is. Quite often we'll find an area of damp, and outside there might be a gully that's blocked, which is causing the damp issue. So we have on our damp meters, we can record it as either a pin moisture meter reading, which records something called wood moisture equivalent, and it's on these 2 pins here. Not particularly a fan of going around sticking pin probes into people's walls on their house, particularly if our client doesn't buy the property. Then we could have a seller that's not too happy. So what we do is we use pinless, and this is a sensor on the rear of our MMS 2 meter, and we pop that on the wall, and there we go. It's reading 147 dry. Now this is just a relative reading, allegedly between 0 and 1,000, but you never really get a reading below about 60 odd on these. The reading would generally be between 0 and 169 is green, so it's dry. Between 170 and 200 or 199 it's amber, so it could be an issue, and above 200 is red, so there potentially is an issue. Very much a misused machine. I know I need to do a video on one of these, but the most accurate reading on one of these, I'm not even holding it against anything at the moment, and it's still recording. Actually, not recording anything now. Who might have some crap on the back? Here, it's recording 68, 70 or so. So pop it on the wall, and it's recording 151. It's in green. It's 155. It's in green. Actually, it looks yellow on the camera, but it's actually green. And 141 also. The most accurate readings with these damp meters is green, dry, because that means there's no issues that we can potentially relate back to damp. This radiator is quite dry, but it's metallic. And because it's metallic, even right at the top here, it's recording 999 fully wet. Now obviously there's going to be moisture in there, but it's picking up the metal. If I could find something else that's metal that we know is dry, like the bed frame, there we go. That's not particularly well on there, but that's recording that as saying that's wet. We've got a damp issue, but it's just picking up the metallic of the bed. So what we've done is we've recorded a number of damp readings all the way throughout the property. Just ask my colleague to unlock his iPad because I don't have his fingerprint to hand. So what we've done is we've recorded damp meter readings all the way throughout the entire property, and all of these are low, and in fact the highest is there's 166 there, but they're all in the range roughly of what, 145 to 165, something like that. So this is indicative. They're all green. If these were moderate, we would mark them on in orange, and if there was any that's high, we would mark them on in red. So we looked at our damp proof course outside. Yes, there's an isolated high area which was just there. No concerns inside at all. All our readings inside are coming out low, so we're pretty happy that there's no damp issues in this property that we need to report back to our client.